Now let's send it off to Kaitlin with another special report from World War II.
In the year 1943, the world was in chaos. It had spiraled into World War II, and while the Axis and Allies fought against each other in order to end the war, an injustice of large scale was taking place in the country we believed fought for freedom. In the USA, more than 10 internment camps had been built and over 110,000 Japanese Americans had been placed in them. About half were children. The sole reason for this action was simple. It was because they were of Japanese descent. Due to the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, by the Japanese soldiers, the United States government became wary in an effort to calm their anxiety. They stripped Japanese Americans of their freedom and forced them to live in these camps, all because they had Japanese blood in their veins. During the whole war, only 10 people were convicted for spying for Japan. However, they were all Caucasians. Life in the camps required the Japanese Americans to cope with extreme temperatures because these camps were located on desert areas. Many died from high levels of emotional stress and inadequate medical supplies. Furthermore, these camps were guarded by military personnel, and they were to take action and transport Japanese Americans who were deemed to disobey the camp's rules or were seen as trouble to lake facilities, which was later called the Segregation Center, and was located in North California Cascade Mountains. Japanese Americans over the age of 17 were deemed as trouble if they had refused to take the oath of loyalty, where their loyalty was questioned even though they may have never had any contact with Japan during the war or before. Being put in these camps made some Japanese Americans feel ashamed of their heritage, while others saw these camps as a replica of concentration camps and deemed it unforgivable since it was a violation of habeas corpus. After 1944, the internment camps became known as real injustice that was placed on Japanese Americans. Some remained in the USA because they deemed the camps to be necessary, while others left to return to Japan. Thank you for listening.
Now we'll move on to the entertainment section.
Andrielle will be talking to us a little about the movies during World War II.
Today we have movies such as The Hunger Games and Braveheart involving fightings, but you may wonder what happened during World War II. Well, since movies were created, they have had the ability to express new ideas and influence the viewers. When World War II began in 1941, topics and views in the movies industry were altered. A majority of the movies created had relations to the war. From America to Britain to Germany, each country used propaganda in war. America used lighting movies to their advantage, created pride in the citizens, and illustrated why they must fight for their country. Sergeant York is a biographical film made in 1941 about the most decorated soldier from World War I, Alvin York. It was the highest grossing movie film of the time. When beginning the war, this was such a great way to do it because you're adoring your past hero. Actually, in fact, York did not want his life to be made into a movie. He only agreed to it to finance the creation of a Bible school. Then he insisted Gary Cooper, a successful American actor, to play him. Cooper went on to win an Academy Award for Best Winning Actor in the film, as well as High Noon. The film also won film editing and is ranked 57th of the 100 most influential American movies and 35th of the 50 American heroes in movies. Sergeant York was a spectacular success in the box office and became the highest grossing film in 1941. Furthermore, another popular topic besides the heroes were women. Rosie the Riveter is the name of a fictional character who symbolizes the millions of real women who worked in America's factories, munition plants, and shipyards during World War II. From her creation in World War II, Rosie also became an iconic American image in the fight to broaden women's civil rights. After Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941, and the U.S. fully engaged in war, male work was depleted to fill the ranks of the U.S. military. This came precisely when America's need for factory output and munitions soared. The U.S. government received help of advertising agencies like J. Walter Thompson and mounted extensive campaigns to encourage women to join the workforce. Magazines and posters played a key role in an effort to recruit women for the wartime workforce, as well as some promotional films. Hollywood actor Walter Pidgeon, working for the government War Bond effort, made a short film promoting the war effort in which he recruited a real Rosie the Riveter worker named Rose Will Monroe. whom he met while touring Ford Motors' Willow Run Air Force Factory. The short film was shown in theaters between featured films to encourage viewers to buy war bonds. Later in 1944, a movie called Rosie the Riveter was made. It was a B-grade romantic wartime comedy made by the Republic Studios with Jane Frazee as Rosie Warren, who worked in an airplane factory. Hollywood films became part of the campaign. William Schaaf has pointed out, none of the changes in women's work could have occurred without the active approval and encouragement of the principal instruments of public opinion. The mass media cooperated by praising women who joined the labor force. Radio stations and periodicals glamorized war work and pleaded with women to hurry and enlist for the war and at their local employment office. Newspapers and magazines did their part in the publicity build-up by depicting Rosie the Riveter as a national heroine and exhorting others to join her. During World War II, about 35,000 women served in the U.S. Armed Forces, at home and abroad. They included the Women's Air Force service pilots, who were awarded the prestigious Congressional Gold Medal on March 10, 2010. And while widespread male enlistment left gaping holes in the industrial workforce between 1940 and 1945, the women percentage of U.S. workforce increased from 27 to 37. And by 1945, nearly 1 out of every 4 married women worked outside the home. So therefore, all these movies had a great influence on the World War II.
Now we'll move on to Monica to talk about Kirk Douglas.
Not only did middle-class working men fight in the war, but so did many famous actors and athletes. You may know Kirk Douglas as an American actor, film producer, and author. But did you know that he also fought in World War II? Surprising, huh? Well, he was and still is a very hardworking man. Let's just talk a little about his background before we get into his participation in World War II. Many of his popular films range from Out of the Past in 1947 to Tough Guys in 1986. Kirk Douglas currently ranks as number 17 on the American Film Institute's list of the greatest male American screen legends of all time, which makes him the highest-ranked living person on the list. In 1996, he received the American Honorary Award for 50 years as a creative and moral force in the motion picture community. He is one of the last surviving actors from Hollywood's golden age. Kirk Douglas was born on December 9, 1916, to a Russian Jewish ancestry and is currently alive at 96 years old. He grew up in a poor ghetto. Kirk Douglas grew up as Izzy Dembski and legally changed his name to Kirk Douglas before entering the Navy during World War II. His talents were noticed before he enlisted in the war. Douglas's acting talents were noticed at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City, and he received a special scholarship. Upon graduating from drama school, Douglas made his Broadway debut as a singing telegraph boy in Spring Again. Not only was he an actor, but also an athlete. Kirk Douglas was on the wrestling team at St. Lawrence University. He left his Broadway and wrestling world when he enlisted in the United States Navy in 1941, shortly after the United States entered World War II. Douglas was a member of an anti-submarine unit in the Pacific. He served as a communications officer in anti-submarine warfare. In 1944, Douglas was medically discharged for war injuries. He was injured after a depth charge exploded prematurely after being discharged. These injuries were sufficient enough for Douglas to be sent home from the war. After having participated in the war, Kirk Douglas used his acting career to pay tribute to his experiences in World War II through war films and plays. His first big break after leaving the war was playing a dead soldier on Broadway in The Wind is 90. The war film Douglas was involved in includes Paths of Glory, In Harm's Way, Heroes of Telemark, and The Final Countdown. You can now not only appreciate his astonishing acting skills, but also respect the fact that he interrupted his budding stage career to enlist in the U.S. Navy, where he served as communications officer in anti-submarine warfare. Thank you. Back to you guys in the studio.